Hey guys, so I recently brought a Cyber Dragon deck profile for the updated, post-ban list format. So as usual, I wanted to provide some gameplay just to go over some of the decks, in the current meta, but just in general, just to show you how some of the interactions work when playing Cyber Dragons, of course. So I'm not going to go over the deck list in detail. You can certainly go check out my deck profile video for that. Basically, it's the same list. The only thing that did change is, I did take into account the feedback that I received is just to stick with Rivalry. I was kind of trying out Gozen, but I think in the end, Rivalry is still probably better, especially in combination with something like Clockwork, so definitely go check out that profile out. Alright, so let's just start with the first replay, which is against Flunder. Unfortunately, this is a deck that's starting to see a lot more play even now, just because not only did it already have a good Unchained matchup, but now with the rise of tier limits, again, we're kind of back to that, position where you have decks that can play your Shifter well. They're probably going to have a good time, and Flunder has never been really a good matchup for Cyber Dragons, I found. I mean, the Wind Barrier statue being gone is definitely a huge boost for us, but at the same time, Shifter also is pretty detrimental against Cyber Dragons as well, so we're going to do the kind of typical Flunder combo, Rubina and Eaglin, get the M-Pen, and that they already have access to the Dreaming Town, so they're going to have access to Unexplored Winds for the Tribute. Ripping that Lightning Storm is really key, definitely, against this deck, especially for Cyber Dragons. We're going second deck, we have to just clear the back row as best as possible. Just not allowing them to get something like Apex Evian, for example, is always nice, but of course we're not going to be able to stop that. At the very least, we should be able to play through that. We're going to start with the Cyber Dragon. I really thought he would negate and destroy the Cyber Dragon core. Typically, that's what people would do. But he actually lets that go. So I guess we have to sort of keep playing through. I also thought he would negate that. We can only summon one, of course, because we already have the other one in hand. Now he actually decides to negate this. And we also have to put in defense mode, remember, against Flunder, just because, you don't want the effects negated. The Rampage actually comes out of Nova being destroyed, which is always nice. And now we can actually easily OTK here. We're going to send a Naxxer. Usually you send like Hers and Core, add back Core, for example, from the graveyard. But there are times where you want to send Naxxer so that you can, especially when you have access to Rev System, just so you can revive back and get access to Nova Infinity Line again. Sometimes even go into another Rampage again after overlaying for, let's say, Rampage plus Cyber Dragon for Nova, but at that point you do have to have the Rampage summoned properly for you to be able to revive back from grave using Naxxer's effect. So let's move on to another meta deck right now, which of course is Purrely. Now this is a deck that kind of had a disappointing turnout in terms of top cut representation at YCS Dortmund. At the same time, it is still a tier 1 deck. Here, I think I kind of missed it at the beginning. Is there a reason they didn't go for the Black Cat? I mean, I'm not like some expert in Purrely, of course. Purrely for us is actually not that bad, as I mentioned in the deck profile. We do have access to a searchable Kaiju, which is always nice. He doesn't even go to Noir here. I'm really not understanding the setup here. Anyways, aside from that, because Purrely, they do have kind of trouble trying to OTK you as well. You can always survive, especially if they like force you to go first, for example. And on top of that, they gain resources back if you out there like Xyz monsters, for example, if they have My Friend plus, even this. But at the same time, it doesn't mean much if they can have all those resources if they can't even survive until end of the turn, as you will kind of see here. He's going to summon the Purrely. So I get kind of baited here. I need to remember this as well. Just I actually can't target the special summon monsters because of the field spell. But it doesn't really matter. At least we can still OTK here through Nova Infinity. We're going to just attack over the Naxxer Infinity, and that effect that Nova can attack Goose, which doesn't really come up too much, but it does come up here. Okay, so we're also going to go into game 2 or game 3, I think. So I'm actually forced to go first here by Purrely. I really should not have bothered even putting Clockwork Knight here. I initially did it because I thought, oh, well, maybe it's a difference maker in terms of, not allowing myself to get killed. At the same time, as I mentioned earlier, Purrely, from what I found out through the survey video that I did of Purrely players, they have a hard time OTKing, so I didn't really have to put this on. Kind of ends up being a waste. My hand also going first was not very good. I couldn't even really set up Infinity, but if we can survive, which we most likely will, we do have some pretty good cards that we can use to try to kill. Anyways, he's going to go through kind of his motions here, as Purrely Happiness on board, and just kind of attaching all the materials. And then even if he goes into Purrely Noir, I think, it is something that we can out, especially through, again, that searchable Kaiju. And so he's going to just have a lot of resources here on standby. He's going to be able to draw off the Pretty Memory multiple times. He does have Nib. That's something we can also play through that decently well for the most part. We're just going to Kaiju right away. That is going to trigger all the spells. Again, it doesn't mean much if we can kill them this turn. And we have a way to contact Fuse here. The downside is, any kind of books is actually quite strong against Cyber Dragons just because of Rampage. Like, we do have to still try to attack. The Feather Duster is of course protected or for my friend Purrely, but it's okay. We're gonna go into Rampage later just so we can pop it again with effect to blow up back row. And we did not go into 5 summons for Nibiru, but we also have Ref System again, which, you know, if you send something like Naxter, like you can still recover pretty well. We also have Duality for additional attack as well if we needed it. So next, we're gonna go against Rescue Ace. This is a deck I think is actually not done as well as people may have thought in terms of YCS level success, but from a regional perspective, it's actually doing quite well. And I believe post Age of Overload, it's actually gonna be better in terms of like the Diable Star or however you pronounce it. I'm hoping, or rather, I'm sure it will be better than what it is right now, at least. So we do have the Turbulence, and this is the one that's gonna be able to set for, which convenient for us. We do have the Feather Duster, and you know, even though they have a lot of background interruptions, you at least know what they are. You may not know exactly where they are, but you at least know there's gonna be like a pop, there's gonna be, you know, like effect negation. I really don't like early. I know people used to play this in like Sprite because it can miss timing. I was never like a huge fan of this. IP, we can always get rid of it, but it looks like he's just gonna link away. Go into Heat. So I was expecting a unicorn actually, but I was like, all right, whatever. It turns out these guys are machines, so it kind of works out in our favor actually. With the contact fusing, we're gonna summon that one Regulus we play. If you draw it, you draw it. That's sort of how I'm kind of playing it. Core effect to get at the repair plant, and we're also gonna just plop that kaiju there just to give him another machine. And you can actually, if you kind of missed that, the Cyber Dragon that was equipped to Therian was actually used to contact fuse into Fortress, which is a funny interaction that a lot of Cyber Dragon players will probably know by now, but just keep that in mind. You can do that, but only if it's the original Cyber Dragon and not any of the baby Cyber Dragons. Fortress has kind of a weird wording where it allows you to do that. So next, it's against Madolche, which of course is not a meta deck by any means. Actually, about a year ago, this is when this deck kind of started popping off a little bit just because of its synergy with like the Earth Shufflers to try to combat against tier limits, at least especially the tier 0 version of tier limits. Now, of course, it was still an uphill battle for Madolche. This is a deck, so since then, you know, since tiers have gone, it has not seen much play. And for this replay, I kind of wanted to show it in terms of, you know, just playing through Nibiru actually. So they have kind of like their typical setup. They get to set the trap, which essentially can negate like any card, which is kind of nice because we do have something like Lightning Storm, which is just going to eat that negate. But you know what? That's better than, you know, eating the negate on core basically. So now we are going to try to proceed. They, of course, they can set up another one, but they cannot use it this turn. They get some additional follow-up as well. We're going to start with the core, get the repair plant. The Clockwork Knight is good. I think I left it here just in case for whatever reason they played like the 1 Gamma to be safe. It didn't really matter, and I knew eventually I'll get to another body to get rid of that one as well. So we're gonna go try to do the Nova first play, rather Infinity. We do get nibbed here, which was totally fine. So Nova is gonna now trigger, and we can bring something like Rampage, and now we can also bring the Nova, or rather Naxter, special that Nova, and then we can now go into Infinity. We can use the Rampage effect, and then now contact fuse it away through using the nib, because it is treated as a machine right now, and we have plenty of monsters to attack through and still be able to OTK through that Nibiru. So next we have Infernoble, of course. This is a deck that finished top 8 at YCS Vancouver, and that was my friend Bester, which you can certainly check out that deck profile. I think right now it's not seeing that much regional success since the new ban list. Of course, we've only had like 1 weekend worth of events, or 2 weekends maybe, but nonetheless, I think this is a deck that will certainly get much better post Age of Overload when they get that Angel Ring, and they can kind of, they don't have to worry about Dark Ruler as much anymore, although to be fair, I guess Dark Ruler is not actually seeing that much play, at least not right now. So this deck can usually set up like multiple spell trap negates, like a pop or a monster negate, for example. I'm not quite sure how this player is doing it, because he ends on something like Appaloosa and Geoffrey, which doesn't seem very optimal, because now this is only monster negates, so I'm not sure how that played out. I mean, I obviously don't know too much in terms of combo lines for Infernoble in detail. We're going to just go through the standard Nova Infinity line, and we're just going to go straight into Infinity because this is a monster negate. We're going to have to negate that essentially, so it does protect, or rather Nibiru. So we're just going to attack through anyway, so I'm like, whatever. And then we still have Duality, and this is why I kind of really like this. And this is why Eternal Dragon can come up in terms of pushing for game. I had originally kind of tried to cut this for a Link 2, because when you have something like Talents and Change of Heart, I found one of the downside of my extra deck is that I don't have a generic Link 2 to just get rid of that monster I take if I cannot actually OTK them that turn. So that is something to consider. I might cut this for something like, you know, Azalea or Nightmare Phoenix. And then we also have Chimera Runick. This one is not nearly as popular as, of course, the general regular branded Runick. This saw some initial play at the beginning when, you know, Chimera was seeing a lot of initial play. But I think the branded version is probably better. So He's gonna do kind of like the standard lines. The thing with this deck, as a branded Despia player myself, I find it's actually quite fragile still, even to an Ash on the Sword Knight. But if left uninterrupted, it can be very strong, especially with that hand rip, which gets a Lightning Storm, which is not terrible because we do at least have Feathered Storm, or rather Feathered Duster, to kind of be able to do the same thing. He does have a monster negate essentially through Mirror Knight, because this is treated as like the whatever Phantom Beast. So we're gonna just go for thrust. The draw of Soldier was really not great because we really need every card that we can, especially when we're going second deck. So we're not gonna be able to OTK, but we at least can set up something. At the same time, that other card could have possibly made the difference in being able to actually OTK this turn. We're gonna do the Soldier, hers play. Of course, we already have the one, or the second Soldier that we already have in our hand. Nova will bring back hers just so we can go for Anima, just so we can suck that up. Again, it's not enough, unfortunately, for a game. Perhaps I missed a line though. But at the same time, you know, we do have Omni Negate, which nowadays, quite frankly, unfortunately, is not enough. If you had another Overflow on top of that, that'd be kind of nice, but I decided not to main deck that card anymore. We're just going to negate the Mirror Sword Knight. That's definitely like a really good card in this deck, but it looks like he just scoops anyways. So we also have a replay against Ignister. Now this is a deck that I truly have not gone up against in a long time, but this is actually a deck that Cyber Dragons have a good matchup with, because if they end on arrival at Ignister, which is like usually an unaffected towers, but it's typically in the extra monster zone and you can just contact fuse it away. Post side though, they can sometimes try to play around it so that they can put in the main monster zone, but again, we do still play searchable kaiju anyways. So this is definitely kind of fun. I wanted to show this actually because it just ended up being kind of like a silly replay where I just OTK in like a very weird fashion. So we're going to start with the emergency, and just ending on Heat Soul does not seem very good, honestly. We're going to get a hit with multiple hand traps though. So here we're going to just kaiju here. Use the Naxter to summon. We're going to try to add off hers. I don't know why he ashed that. That's a really terrible thing to ash. You can also special summon kaiju, remember, when your opponent has a kaiju as well. So we're just going to suck it up, and we're just going to go for a very untraditional OTK there. Okay, so that was it for the Cyber Dragon replays. Hopefully you found that enjoyable. I know it's a rogue deck, but still certainly a very fun deck to play at that. So definitely thanks to all for watching. Thank you to all my patrons for their continued support as always, and well, take care guys.